As those familiar with the AIDS and, of course, the recent coronavirus epidemics can confirm, devastating outbreaks of disease have long produced belief systems regarding the outbreak's origin and cause, just as they have accusations of blame against outsiders, against enemies, against those you fear. By 1492, there was something like 5 million Native Americans living within what is today the United States. By the close of the Indian Wars in the late 1800s, about 240,000 had survived. That's a 95% reduction. European and African diseases new to the Americas were the most destructive cause of this demographic collapse. Smallpox, typhus and measles especially. Smallpox was feared even by the whites, among whom the disease proved less deadly than among the indigenous population. This from a continental American soldier fighting the British in May 1775. And as can be seen, its plausibility as a biological weapon was also recognized. Several tribes passed oral traditions of disease outbreaks caused by intentional contamination by whites. There is a Jesuit story of a Canadian tribe becoming sick after receiving a gift of clothes from the French king, a tradition of the Ottawa Indians from the Great Lakes region of 1757, who were sold a tin box filled with mouldy particles, thereafter becoming ravaged by sickness. A Chippewa story from 1770 tells of a fur trader from Minnesota who had given a keg of rum wrapped in a smallpox-infected flag. In 1861, tribes of the South and Southwest attributed a smallpox outbreak to a blanket sold by traders to a Kiowa man. Today, the story of whites giving smallpox-infected blankets to Native Americans has become a kind of common knowledge, a terrifying shorthand symbolizing the particular evil of the European and Colonial American genocide of the indigenous population. It appears as statements of historical fact in numerous history books. In the song My Country 'Tis of Thy People You're Dying by the Oscar-winning singer-songwriter Buffy Sainte-Marie, and in TV shows such as the recent Emmy-winning Broken Trail, during which Robert Duvall's character kills a man named Smallpox Bob, a white trader known for selling infected blankets to Plains Indians. In a Washington Post article from last year, the quote, "memory of the distribution of blankets infected with smallpox" is directly referenced as a reason for the alleged reluctance of modern Native Americans to receive the coronavirus vaccine. In truth, we have evidence for this happening on one occasion only. In 1763, Shawnee and Mingo warriors laid siege to an English garrison stationed at Fort Pitt, in present-day downtown Pittsburgh. Between them, the Philadelphia-based Colonel Henry Bouquet, a Swiss national in the employ of the British Army, and Sir Geoffrey Amherst, the Commander-in-Chief of British forces in North America, debated in a series of letters how best to deal with the siege. After lamenting that it would be impractical to hunt the indigenous Indians with dogs, Amherst approved a plan to distribute among the sieging tribes blankets taken from the fort's hospital, wherein a number of patients infected with smallpox were being treated. He ends his note by advising Bouquet to try every other method that can serve to extirpate this execrable race. Unbeknownst to the colonel and his chief, soldiers garrisoned at Fort Pitt were already well ahead in executing this plan. A militia captain, William Trent, wrote in his diary that on June 24th, a parley had taken place between diplomats from the British and native sides, after which the Indians had asked for provisions and liquor for their return to camp. Anticipating this request, the fort's representatives had handed over provisions as well as 2 blankets and a handkerchief which had come from the smallpox ward. It is estimated that between 60 and 80 indigenous people died in the Ohio Valley from a localized smallpox epidemic subsequent to these events. Although of secondary importance, such as the nature of the infectious disease, delayed incubation periods, and the fact that smallpox was present in the region anyway, that we do not know if those infected caught the disease from the gifted blankets or, for example, from the clothes they had taken from the estimated 2,000 outlying settlers they had fought and killed in making their way up to Fort Pitt that spring. Regardless, Trent later submitted an invoice to the British military for reimbursement of the blankets and handkerchief, to replace in kind those which were taken from people in the hospital to convey the smallpox to the Indians. Naturally, the payment was approved. The stories of European and American settlers giving smallpox-infected blankets to indigenous peoples exist in a context of national trauma, suffering and heartache. They exist in a context of the historical genocide of the Native American people, in which disease played a central and devastating part, and which killed not only people, but culture, memory and self-worth. Many hundreds of thousands were murdered using guns, swords and clubs. The intentional displacement of people, the destruction of crops and cattle, of economies and social networks, helped create conditions in which disease killed millions. This is historical fact. That smallpox blankets played even a small role in this appalling genocide, the evidence from native oral tradition notwithstanding, is almost certainly not. Thanks for listening. If you like this, subscribe and hit the notification bell.